Is your birth chart a day chart or a night chart? That question, which takes about 5 seconds to answer, immediately tells you a whole lot. For example, which planets are working in your favor and which ones aren't. That's the power of planetary sect, the topic that we'll be discussing today. My name is Geoffrey Ballinger, and I'm a student of traditional astrology. Today, with Satya Astrology, we'll be talking about the traditional astrology technique of planetary sect. Let's dive right in. Like many of the techniques that we've covered so far, Sect tells you a lot about planetary condition. That is the strength of a planet depending upon where it is positioned in the chart. Sect will tell us what is the most positive planet in the chart and what is the most negative or challenging, as well as how that plays into the life of the native. As we explore these concepts, which are relatively straightforward, we'll pull in interesting examples from the charts of Charles Dickens and Gangadhar Tilak. There are two sects that planets can be divided into: the diurnal or day sect and the nocturnal or night sect. You can think of these as two opposing teams. On the one hand, you have the day team, and on the other hand, you have the night team. Each sect or team contains the following. First, you have a luminary or sect light that rules the sect. Then you have the benefic and the malefic. Mercury, as usual, plays both teams. It can be either diurnal or nocturnal, depending upon whether it's morning phase or evening phase. The diurnal sect, or day team, is as follows. The Sun is the diurnal luminary or sect light. Jupiter is the diurnal benefic, and Saturn is the diurnal malefic. A morning phase Mercury becomes part of the day team. The nocturnal sect is as follows. The Moon is the sect light, Venus is a nocturnal benefic, and Mars is a nocturnal malefic. An evening phase Mercury joins the night team. The luminaries define each sect. The Sun, which is hot and dry, defines the day, and the Moon, which is cold and moist, defines the night. Which planets belong to which sect was decided depending upon how their own qualities interacted with the qualities of each sect. The benefics, for example, are put into sects that emphasize their intrinsic beneficial qualities. Jupiter, which is associated with good reputation and wisdom, is a sanguine planet in the original meaning of the word. It's social, and it likes a little bit of heat to get things going. That's why it's put in the day team. Venus, meanwhile, tends more towards relaxation and pleasure. Nighttime activities, if you will, and so the coolness and moisture of the night emphasize its own positive characteristics. The opposite is true of the malefics. We want to tone down their negative characteristics with the qualities of the sect that they're put into. Saturn, which is considered excessively cold and dry, was put into the day sect so that the heat of the day will tone down this excessive coldness and make it more temperate and beneficial toward the native. Mars, meanwhile, with its excessive heat and dryness, is considered to be reckless and aggressive. The coolness and calmness of the night thus tone down this negative aspect of Mars, making it a calmer, more beneficial planet in the night sect. So how do we determine the sect of the chart? It's quite simple, really. Is it day or is it night? If the Sun is above the horizon, then it's a day chart. If the Sun is below the horizon, then it's a night chart. Around sunrise and sunset, this gets a little more complicated, but we don't need to worry about that for now. Also note that the Moon's position in the chart doesn't matter so much in terms of sect. The Moon can be in the same hemisphere as the Sun, regardless of whether it's a day chart or a night chart. The next step then is determining which planets align with the sect of the chart. Those are the in-sect planets, not the insect planets. And determine which planets are out of sect or contrary to the sect of the chart. In a day chart, for example, the Sun will be the in-sect luminary, Jupiter will be the in-sect benefic, and Saturn will be the in-sect malefic. Whereas the Moon will be the out-of-sect luminary, Venus will be the out-of-sect benefic, and Mars will be the out-of-sect malefic. Note that nocturnal planets are generally weaker in a day chart, just like diurnal planets are generally weaker in a night chart. But what does this mean in practice? Here we can use the metaphor of the two-party system. In a day chart, for example, the day team or diurnal sect has won the election. They're in power. This means that they have the authority and responsibility to carry out their agenda. They're more comfortable, more effective, and tend to exercise their meanings in a more beneficial way for the native. In contrast, the out-of-sect team in a day chart, the night team, can be thought of as the opposition party. They have less freedom and less authority. They're not able to accomplish their goals, and in some cases can even work against the interests of the native. One of the most useful applications of the concept of sect is determining which is the most positive and which is the most negative planet in a chart. If you remember, insect planets tend to be more helpful and comfortable. So for the most positive planet in a chart, we're going to look to the insect benefic. That would mean Jupiter in a day chart and Venus in a night chart. The same logic applies to the malefics. Out-of-sect planets tend to be more contrary to the interests of the native and less comfortable, less powerful. That would mean for the most negative planet in a chart, we want to look to the out-of-sect malefic. That means Saturn in a night chart and Mars in a day chart. You can see this exercised pretty clearly in the chart of Copernicus. Copernicus was born at night, so the most negative planet in his chart would be Saturn, the diurnal malefic. Saturn is right there along the MC in the 10th house of career and reputation. While Copernicus was a highly influential thinker and would be quite famous in later years, during his lifetime he had a lot of hardship getting his life's work published. Here we see clearly the influence of Saturn, its obstructive nature acting as an obstacle to Copernicus's desire to get his life's work published. Let's dive in even further with some more examples. If you take a look at the birth chart of Tilak, you can see the sun is just above the ascendant along the eastern horizon. That means that the chart is diurnal, and the sun is the sect light of the chart. That puts the day team in power and the night team out of power. The diurnal planets, therefore, are the sun, Jupiter, and Saturn, whereas the nocturnal planets will be the moon, Mars, and Venus. If we want to look for the most positive planet, then we see it's the insect benefic, Jupiter, which is located in the 9th house in the sign of Aries. The most negative planet, the contrary to sect malefic, is located on the other side of the chart. It's Mars in the sign of Libra in the 3rd house. The other example we have is illustrative because it's a night chart. As Charles Dickens was born, the sun had just set below the western horizon and is located in the sign of Aquarius in the 6th house. That means that it's a night chart, putting the moon in power as a nocturnal sect leader. The nocturnal planets are the moon, Venus, and Mars, and they're in sect here. The diurnal planets, or the contrary to sect planets, are the sun, Jupiter, and Saturn. If we look at Mercury, it's located in the 5th house, which means it will rise before the sun and is in the morning phase. That means it's part of the day team. Looking for the most positive planet in the chart, we'll look for the insect benefic. That's Venus, which is located in the sign of Pisces in the 7th house. The most negative planet, the contrary to sect malefic, will be Saturn, which is located in the 5th house in the sign of Capricorn. In broad strokes, sect allows us to define which planets are strong or weak in a given chart. There are a few additional qualifying conditions that allow us to understand planetary strength, especially in terms of sect. These are known as sect rejoicing conditions. In general, a planet supported by sect rejoicing conditions will be more balanced and supportive in its expression. The first sect rejoicing condition is rejoicing by hemisphere. This means that a planet is positioned in a hemisphere that supports its sect membership. The dividing line between the two hemispheres is the horizon, stretching from the ascendant to the descendant, and it will cut the chart in two, so you have an upper hemisphere and a lower hemisphere. In general, diurnal planets prefer to be in the same hemisphere as the Sun, whereas nocturnal planets prefer to be in the opposite hemisphere. That means, if it's a day chart, then the Sun will be above the horizon, and all of the planets in the day team will rejoice if they are in the upper horizon, whereas the nocturnal planets would rejoice if they're in the lower horizon. It's important to note that there'll be a mix of these in any chart. Even in a day chart, some diurnal planets will be below the horizon and some nocturnal planets will be above it. The moon can also be above or below again, regardless of whether it is in a day chart or a night chart, but it will only rejoice if it's in the hemisphere opposite the Sun. Right away, we can take a look at Tilak's chart. Remember that it's a day chart, so the diurnal team is in power. All of the diurnal planets, that is, Saturn, Jupiter, and morning phase Mercury, are above the horizon, allowing them to rejoice by hemisphere. Of the nocturnal planets, only Mars is below the horizon, allowing it to rejoice by hemisphere. Venus and the Moon are above the horizon in a day chart, so they do not rejoice by hemisphere. Let's take a quick look at Charles Dickens' chart, which is a night chart. The Sun is below the horizon here, which means that the nocturnal planets will rejoice above the horizon and the diurnal planets will rejoice below the horizon. Venus and Mars are above the horizon, allowing them to rejoice by hemisphere, whereas the Sun is below the horizon, so it does not rejoice by hemisphere. Of the diurnal planets, Saturn and morning phase Mercury are in the lower hemisphere along with the Sun, allowing them to rejoice by hemisphere, whereas Jupiter is above the horizon, so it does not rejoice by hemisphere. The next sect rejoicing condition is rejoicing by zodiacal sign. Recall that each sign of the zodiac is assigned either a masculine or feminine classification. These are also either diurnal or nocturnal classifications. In general, a diurnal planet will rejoice in a masculine sign, whereas a nocturnal planet will rejoice in a feminine sign. In broad strokes, that means that the Sun, Saturn, Jupiter, and morning phase Mercury will rejoice in the air or fire signs, whereas the nocturnal planets, the Moon, Venus, and Mars, as well as evening phase Mercury, will rejoice in water and earth signs. Now, Mars is an interesting exception to consider. Recall that it is technically a masculine planet. However, even though it might itself be uncomfortable in feminine signs, ancient astrologers thought that the moist nature of feminine signs would temper Mars's excessive heat and dryness, allowing it to act a little bit calmer when located in a nocturnal sign. In Tilak's chart, you can see right away that the Sun and Jupiter are in the masculine fire signs of Leo and Aries, which means they rejoice by sign. However, Saturn and morning phase Mercury are in the feminine sign of Pisces, so they do not rejoice by sign. None of the nocturnal planets rejoice by sign, as they're all located in masculine signs. You see Mars in Libra at the bottom of the chart, and then you have Venus in Leo and the Moon in Aries. In Dickens' chart, you can see that Jupiter is located in the masculine sign of Gemini, and the Sun is located in the masculine sign of Aquarius, so they both rejoice by sign. Morning phase Mercury and Saturn are both in the feminine sign of Capricorn, so they do not rejoice by sign. Of the nocturnal planets, Venus is in the feminine sign of Pisces, allowing it to rejoice by sign, whereas the Moon and Mars are both in masculine signs, that is Sagittarius and Aries respectively, so they do not rejoice by sign. The third condition is rejoicing by solar phase. If a diurnal planet, that is Saturn or Jupiter, rises before the Sun, they're in their morning phase and are thought to rejoice by solar phase. A nocturnal planet, however, Venus or Mars, are rejoicing when they're in their evening phase, which means that they are visible in the night sky after the Sun sets. It's important to note that a planet can only rejoice if it is between 12 and 120 degrees from the Sun. If it gets any closer to 12 degrees, it enters a state known as combustion. This is a debility that weakens the planet, and we'll cover it in more detail in a future video. Note as well that Mercury cannot be rejoicing by solar phase, because whether it's in its morning phase or nocturnal phase will determine what sect it is in. The final rejoicing condition applies only to the moon and has to do with its phases. A waxing moon, that is, a moon increasing in light between the new moon and the full moon, is thought to resonate with the energies of the day, and therefore rejoices in a day chart. You can tell that the moon is waxing because it is up to 180 degrees ahead of the sun. In contrast, a waning moon is reducing in light. It's moving from the full moon to the new moon, and is therefore thought to resonate with the energies of the night, and rejoices in a nocturnal chart. A waning moon will be up to 180 degrees behind the sun. Let's apply these final conditions to Tilak's chart first. Jupiter and Saturn are both in their morning phase, allowing them to rejoice by phase, whereas Mars, the nocturnal malefic, is in its evening phase, also allowing it to rejoice by phase. Venus, however, is too close to the sun to evaluate. It's in combustion. The moon, meanwhile, is waning in a day chart, so it does not rejoice. Now we can take a look at Dickens' chart. Saturn is in its morning phase and rises before the sun, allowing it to rejoice by solar phase, whereas Jupiter is in its evening phase, so it does not rejoice by solar phase. Both Venus and Mars set after the sun, allowing them to be in their evening phase and rejoice by solar phase. The moon, meanwhile, is waning in a night chart, so it also rejoices by phase. When assessing planetary condition, it can be helpful to have a system to allow you to assign values to each planet, depending upon how strong or weak they are. Satya Astrology has developed a grading system for Sect, as well as other planetary conditions, to allow you to see which planets are the strongest and the weakest in a given chart. I want to share those with you. So first, if we want to grade Sect, we'll look at the sun. So if you have the sun in a diurnal chart, and it's rejoicing by sign, as that's the only sect rejoicing condition that applies to the sun, then we would give the sun the grade A++. For example, the sun in Leo in a day chart. If it's not rejoicing by sign but only in sect, then it would receive a grade of A+. The sun in a night chart and rejoicing by sign would receive a grade of D+. Whereas the sun in a night chart and not rejoicing by sign would receive a D. Then we can move on to the other planets. That's anything but the sun, of course. The best condition it could possibly be in would be to be in sect, rejoicing by hemisphere, solar phase, and sign. For example, Jupiter in a day chart, in morning phase, above the horizon, and in the masculine sign of Aries. That would receive a grade A++. Then, if it's in sect and rejoicing by hemisphere and sign, or in sect and rejoicing by hemisphere and solar phase, so two rejoicing conditions, it would receive a grade of A+. If it's in sect and rejoicing by hemisphere, then it would receive a grade of A. If it's in sect, rejoicing by solar phase, and rejoicing by sign, you give it a B++. So rejoicing by hemisphere gets a little more strength than the other conditions. If it's in sect and rejoicing by sign, or in sect and rejoicing by solar phase, you can give it a grade of B+. And if it's merely in sect in a day chart for the sun, or Saturn, or Jupiter, or morning phase Mercury, then you give it a grade of B. Now we get to contrary to sect. If it's contrary to sect but rejoicing by all the conditions, you give it a C++. If it's contrary to sect and rejoicing by hemisphere and sign, or rejoicing by hemisphere and solar phase, then you can give it a C+. If it's contrary to sect and rejoicing by hemisphere, you can give it a C. If it's contrary to sect and rejoicing by solar phase and sign, a D++. Contrary to sect and rejoicing by sign, or rejoicing by solar phase, just one rejoicing condition at this point, it's a D+. And if it's just contrary to sect, then it's a D. Now let's look at the example charts and see how this grading system works in practice. First up, we have the chart of Tilak. Remember that this is a day chart, so the diurnal sect is in power. So those are the planets that we'll look at first. You have, as the most powerful planets, the Sun, which is in sect and in the masculine sign of Leo, so it receives a sect grade of A++. Then you have Jupiter, which is in sect in the masculine sign of Aries, in the same hemisphere as the Sun, and in its morning phase, so it also receives an A++ grade. Saturn is the insect malefic. It's in the same hemisphere as the Sun and is in its morning phase, but it's in a feminine sign, the sign of Pisces, so it just receives an A+. Mercury, which is in morning phase, is in sect and in the same hemisphere as the Sun, so it receives an A grade. Now, out of the contrary to sect planets, you have the Moon, the nocturnal luminary, which is just contrary to sect. Venus is also just contrary to sect. Neither of those receive any rejoicing conditions. Whereas Mars is contrary to sect and rejoicing by hemisphere, since it's the opposite side of the chart from the Sun, and also rejoicing by solar phase, since it's in its evening phase. That gives Mars a C+ grade. Next, we can look at the chart of Charles Dickens. This is a night chart, so the nocturnal sect is in power. The Moon, the nocturnal luminary, is in sect and waning, which means its energies align with the energies of the night, so it receives a B+ grade. Remember that waning and waxing are technically solar phase conditions for the Moon. Then Venus is in sect in the feminine sign of Pisces and in its evening phase, so it receives a B++ grade. If we look at the nocturnal planets, the one in its best condition is probably Mars. It's in sect, the opposite hemisphere from the Sun, and is in its evening phase, so it receives an A+ grade. Now let's take a look at the contrary to sect planets. Mercury is in its morning phase, so it's part of the day team. It's contrary to sect in the same hemisphere as the Sun, giving a C grade. Saturn is contrary to sect in the same hemisphere as the Sun and in its morning phase, so it gets a C+ grade. The Sun and Jupiter both receive a D+ grade because they're contrary to sect and in a masculine sign. Sect is a powerful technique in traditional astrology, and one that's surprisingly easy to use. It just takes a single glance at a chart to determine whether it's diurnal or nocturnal, and the next easy step is to determine what the most positive and what the most negative planet in the chart are. If you look just a little bit closer, you can determine sect rejoicing conditions, which say even more about the respective power of the planets. In general, in sect or rejoicing by sect planets will be comfortable and effective at carrying out their significations. They tend to be more beneficial to the native. Contrary to sect planets, and planets that do not rejoice by sect are weaker, less comfortable, and tend to carry out parts of their significations that are less beneficial to the native. Of course, sect is not the only condition for evaluating a chart. We'll look at a number of other techniques in future lessons, including essential dignities, which will give you even more contexts. However, it's important to recognize how the sects act as two opposing teams in the birth chart. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something useful today. I encourage you to try out your new knowledge right away. Open up your chart and take a look. Is it diurnal or nocturnal? Then, take the next step. What's the most positive planet in your chart and the most negative planet in your chart? Go and leave your answer in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and wait for the next video, which will be on essential dignities.